What do you remember from the first either day or that week from September 11th? Is there any memories that stand out the most?
I feel like 9/11 in general, the day is what comes to my mind first, is like everything that unfolded that day. But now, 21 years later, sitting here, I feel like when I knew he was gone, my main thing was, holy shit, I want people to know who he was. So it
Hmm.
feels funny to sit here on a microphone talking about it because that was like my anxiety
The
a lot
anxiety was
after losing him and knowing he was gone. I was like, no one's gonna know him. Like, no, is he gonna be erased? Like,
right.
I panicked about that,
Was that
and I
what?
felt like I had to tell people like who he was and what I didn't want people to forget him.
What about September 11th as a whole? Did that the fact that it was public? It's kind of ironic having that thought, and when we all lost our dad on a public light. So in some ways he's not, but then he's, for lack of better words, is jumbled in with 3,000 other people. So it's
Hmm.
public, but also it's community. It's a community of everyone. So does
Yeah,
that make
I
sense?
took comfort in that it's not. I don't think it's forgotten. I don't. I hopefully it never is forgotten because it's so public
Mhm.
that when the anniversary happens, it's. I feel like, oh, it's a way for everyone to remember, him, not just him, but all the lives that were lost that day. You feel a sense of comfort in knowing that there's thousands of people that are feeling the same grief as you.
Well, then what was going through both of your heads? I mean, Gina or Jacqueline? Oh, Gina, you can go first in regards to because you just started college
I was 17.
and you were literally at
I
college.
was literally at college, yeah, and my roommate woke me up. So it was strange. It's weird. Looking back, I don't remember a lot, to be honest. I think as a teenager, I was still in that age bracket where you think your parents are invincible and nothing's
Hmm.
going to happen to them. And then we never experienced a trauma like that, ever. So going through it was almost weird. Just, I don't remember feeling like it was real. Took a long time for me to accept that it happened and he was gone and he wasn't coming home, just because it was so right, like it
And you
was
weren't
so,
you weren't
I
home.
wasn't home, and by the time I got home everything had happened. Like the
Mm.
towers were already down, and I feel like I was catching up to you're kind of getting up to speed because we didn't have cell phones the way we did today, so like nobody knew what was happening, nobody knew what was going on. And
You couldn't get in
so
touch with
you couldn't
anyone.
get in touch with anyone. Yeah, so by the time you got home and you had the TV was what kind of showed us everything and what was happening. So it didn't really sink in
Mm.
until a long time, at least for me. It took me a long time to kind of accept everything that happened.
And again, like there's so much I don't remember. It's funny, it's interesting that you say that because I always chalked it up to like, okay, was I just because I was 12? Was it a blend of being 12 or just the traumatic experience? But there's so much I don't remember. And I was telling mom on the last time when we just recorded our episode that was kind of like, it's just frustrating. And it kind of frustrates me to not almost not remember what you two were going through. Like, you obviously know how close we are, how much I care about everyone, but like to not remember those things.
But you couldn't. You were too small. Your brain literally wasn't mature enough to grasp the severity of what happened.
Yeah.
And even just grieve, like you don't know how to grieve as an 11-year-old
I
boy.
mean, let
Like
alone
how,
7. I mean, do you know what
yeah, you don't. You don't.
Yeah.
Even now looking back, and it's still, your grief changes the older you get
Mhm.
and the phases of life that you go through. So my grief now is so different than my grief then.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
I'm curious about because Jacqueline wears her heart on her sleeve. I think everyone knows that, but you might not know that. And me and Gina, I feel like are, I would say, more similar and like being a little more inward, perhaps.
Yeah.
So, Jack, do you remember were you more visceral? Like, were you like immediate tear? Were you tear? Like, obviously, everyone cried, but did you break down and like compared? What was the difference in the dynamic of how you both handled
I,
it?
I was home waiting for everyone to come home. So I remember being in a panic, not knowing where daddy was, but also being like, Gina's not home, David in school, mommy started a new job. I couldn't get in touch with her. I didn't even know the number. And just waiting, like even to get in touch with Jeffrey, I was like, wh- is this real? Like, is this really happening? And then
Mhm.
once everybody came home, I felt like I was like in a mode where I was like, he's not dead.
Mm.
I was like, because I had friends calling me, Kathleen calling me, friends calling me, being like, my dad's home, he's home, he made it home. Like,
Yeah. You were hearing stories of people who got out.
Oh
right. You
shit!
had like a
Yeah.
false hope of saying, okay, well, we're gonna find him. Like we went
Yeah.
on a news channel and showed pictures and said his name, went to
We
search
we went to the
hospitals.
city. Like I think I don't remember how
You
many.
both did?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
Where
went
was
to the
I? It was
city
home?
with
you were home
Uncle Tommy, Uncle Carlo, and the family. And we went to the city. We went to the
to
Red
look
Cross
hospitals.
to just see if his name was on any list.
So that's the crazy part about specifically having that experience with September 11th. There's obviously there's sudden deaths. There's other experiences that weren't 9/11 with a similar, I guess, I know, I guess natural disasters or whatever. But that idea that there's hope blended with, like, you just don't know.
Yeah.
At what point do you guys recall a turning point of being like, okay, he's not coming home?
Remember when we
The
went?
nighttime.
Oh well, the night. Yeah, the night. That first night.
First
First
night?
I think the morning,
Mhm.
the next morning, we all went to bed and we had a hard time going to bed that night. And then I woke up.
We slept in
to-
Gina's room. You probably don't
yeah.
remember, but me, you, mom, and Gina were in one room.
Really?
We couldn't close our eyes because we felt scared to close our eyes because we were like, then this day is like over
Yeah.
and he's not home. That was a bad night.
Yeah, that was a bad night. And the next day, I remember the next day being really bad too. But again, I don't remember a lot of things either. I remember memories, vivid moments of like going on the ferry, and the family members were allowed to go to the site. I think it was like 2 weeks after, but that was when the rubble was still there, the smoke was still there, but they were allowing family members to go and look at everything, look at the devastation. I remember that being a traumatic moment. That was very traumatic for me, seeing that the night after. And then for me, the first night that the four of us had dinner alone, like
Yeah.
family had gone. It was like the house was quiet. It was like a good couple days, maybe like a week or two after everything happened. And we sat there and we had our first meal without him. I remember that being very,
Strange.
yeah.
What was the communication level between? What do you remember from communicating, like between you two or with mommy? Like what, like that communicative aspect of starting that process of trying to get through it? Because mommy took the bull by the horns and really just
Yeah.
dragged us
I don't
through.
think mom really showed her grief for a long time, because I think she just was like, I got to put it together. I have 3 kids. I'm not going to fall apart. And I think she kind of just like pummeled through it. And I suffered in silence. I was the quiet one, kind of like you. I cried at night. I had insomnia for a long time. You were more verbal about it.
Yeah. But also watching you, like you collected newspaper articles. You were like a hoarder in your room. And then when you had to go to college, I remember, and my mom sent us back to school. Like I went back to school. Like the next week, we went back to school. And I remember being like, she has to go back to college. We drove you home from college. And that was really hard. Because I had you and mommy at home. And then her leaving, it was just like an unsettling feeling. It was just
Yeah.
like another one, another goodbye, it was just like annoying.
Yeah. But I also really remember you getting home from school that day.
Yeah.
And then
that's all I remember.
You, me, and Jeffrey,
Mm-hmm.
her husband, took you in. We sat you down in your room and we were on your bed. And
You were little. You were so little. You were Jake's age.
Yeah, 12.
Yeah. And I mean, 12
okay.
is Jake when you really think about it.
What do you remember seeing in me? Because like I said, I'm not trying to make this about me, but I'm curious. Like, what? Because again, I don't
no,
remember
you
so
just
much.
cried.
I just cried.
You just cried. Sorry.
It's okay. No. I'm trying to leave
You
it
just
off.
cried.
Yeah, and again, I don't even. I don't.
We all did though. Like it was like we just sat there, and we told you, we were like, something happened to Daddy. I don't remember who spoke. I don't
remember
know
how
if
we
remember
said
if it was you or if it was Jeffrey, but
Well, I remember seeing I remember coming home. And I remember being restrained from seeing the TV, but I remember going. I forced myself through the living room. And the Abertelli, our cousins, were in the living room, and I forced myself to watch it. And I saw everything happen. I was like you said, you came home, everything was done. Saying I came home at like 3:00, everything was done.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched the replay immediately. I remember that much. And then after that, it's like it all went black. That's why this conversation is so important to me, to understand what you were going through and how you felt, but more importantly, how you got through it. Like, how did you get through that? Maybe it's many things, but how did you proceed from the many years later?
It was a lot of chaos. For like a week straight, there was constant people at the house. There was phone calls being made. It was like the beginning, like I said, we were trying to like see if he was alive or find him.
Yeah.
And then even then, like the whole journey of being involved in this was, okay, 3 months later we had a memorial for him. Then 6 months later they found his remains. And then it was just, there was so much. It was so heavy. It was
Yeah.
so heavy.
The
And it was
first
in the
year.
spotlight.
Yeah.
Which you find comfort in because it's like a whole world on like grieving with you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then you find anger in it because you're like, well, it doesn't change anything. He's still not coming home.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ups and downs, which is grieving, right? Everybody goes through those ups and downs. It was just
It's just one of those things. I think
surreal.
because we were so young, well, especially you don't really get to deal with the after effects until you're older.
That's exactly. Was it similar
Yeah.
for you girls?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like at what point? Because the grieving process is interesting. You have the year, the day up to the year, and then again, what you just alluded to. I feel like there's stuff that I had to figure out down the road. It's not, I never considered it grieving. I guess it was, but it was just seeing things in a different light because you change as you get older. You know, you're at the same time. You know, you happened when you were 17. Now 21 years old, I'm a totally different person.
Yeah.
Let alone I feel like I'm a different person from yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm 34 years old. I'm still calling mom mommy, so I don't know what the hell that means. But that's a whole other thing. But what? Because you mentioned anger. Was there any prominent emotions between either of you that you remember, even let alone today? But were there any prominent emotions besides obviously sadness, this and that? Was there regret? Were there any, as you would say, cliche emotions that you felt more prominent than the others? Either of you?
Guilt.
Guilt?
Guilt that like I was living and he wasn't. But that I don't know. Like that was always an anger, a lot of
Mhm.
anger.
And nothing's right or it's like what you feel is what you feel. That's the thing. So
I felt worried
about
just about everything. I was worried about the first things that we weren't going to do with him. I was worried about Gina going back to school. What was mom like? What mommy? I was always worried like not to leave mommy home or like
You
going to your games and like
Yeah.